Hello my friends and welcome to this pick a card for the new moon in Virgo. I'm going to go ahead and let you pause right here so you can look at the cards and pick whichever one you want, or whichever ones you want. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and click through to your reading in the description down below. So I'm immediately seeing fear and hesitation on your part, and I'm also seeing that that's incredibly valid given everything that led to this moment and where you are at this moment. Heavy stuff. And so this feeling of hesitation, this fear, is not only caused by the things that you've gone through, but it's actively affecting, actively blocking your progression. And before we get into the reading, I want to point out that what is ahead, what is beyond this threshold, through which you can only walk through, like you can only get through this threshold if you do go through it as this new person that you have become, and you leave in the past what belongs there. We start with the Two of Wands, which is the only reversal, and here depicted as Janus, the Roman god of thresholds. And because it's the only reversal, again, that's where I'm getting that hesitation to walk through this doorway that, again, is going to lead to essentially what you've been wanting, what you've been asking for, what you've been working towards as you've become this new person that you are now. And again, it makes, like, there's that hesitation attached to moving forward because of how maybe dark and twisty your past might have been, and so there's like trust issues, right? And hesitation is why I keep on saying that, there's this idea of like crazy past, is because the three center cards all reflect stories with that theme of a past that one is trying to get away from. The Page of Cups shows Bakunawa, which is a Filipino myth. He is one of 7 moon siblings who lived up in the astral realm, obviously up in heaven. And there was a sea serpent who lived in the deep lower realms who kind of grew envious of their glow, and he kind of grew hungry, and so he snapped up and ate one of them. And eventually he grew kind of hungry, ate all of them. And as they were being consumed, they kind of descended from that heavenly realm, and they were stuck here on our mortal realm. But there is the story that's kind of given with this deck of cards, tells that these beings, although they lost that sense of kind of divinity and they were now mortal, were able to find happiness here in the mortal realm. And so attached to this card is also the myth of Tua Shen, which is a Chinese deity attached to homosexual companionship. And he is dancing around the feet of Bakunawa with the red string of fate attached to a lot of Greek mythology. So there's a lot of pulling from a lot of different cultures, this idea of things happening in order to gain something else. Like there was that loss of divinity, but they found happiness. Fate brought in love, right? Like it's just this idea of good things coming in despite those bad things. And the Little Mermaid, we all know the story that it's, not very happy, and that this mermaid falls in love with a human, gives up her voice and her home and her familiarity, and goes through pain in order to gain this love, which doesn't really pan out for her in the end. But again, we're just not going to focus on that right now, because that's not really what that ending sorrow melancholic theme doesn't really apply to the energy of the Fool. It's more so about her willingness to go through such tribulation, to go through such trouble, through such pain in order to gain what's next. That's what the Fool is about, that enthusiasm to move forward. And in the center, front and center, is Donkey Skin, which is a story, kind of creepy, of this king who has it all. He has the beautiful wife, a healthy kid, and he has this donkey who poops gold. And when the wife dies, her dying wish is that he never remarry unless she is more beautiful than she is. And that's kind of the point, is that she's very beautiful. And he looks far and wide, but there is no one except for his daughter. And when she refuses and tries to dissuade him, one of the things that she asks for, thinking that he won't do it, is the skin of that donkey that poops cold. And when he does it, she freaks out, takes that donkey skin and a few of her belongings and dips to the next kingdom, hides her beauty underneath this donkey skin, and works in the kitchens at a castle. She cooks so well, and she's so charming that the prince there falls in love with this common girl. And when she reveals who she is, they get married, and she is now free from this king who has actively been looking for her throughout this whole time. And again, so all of these stories have that idea of a past that we're trying to get away from. And it's a dark and twisty one. It's something that's kind of, there's a valid reason for wanting to run away from those things. There's a valid reason for why those things in the past, heavy as they were, have left this impression of fear and now hesitation of moving forward into better things, because maybe it's not something you're used to. And that's okay. That's valid. That hesitation it served you well in the past, so there's no reason to berate yourself for it. It's just take your time and look at your evidence, look at your surroundings. And that's where we're going into with temperance, where temperance shows Avalokiteshvara. I hope I'm not butchering that. And Avalokiteshvara is a figure of Buddhist, I don't want to call it mythology, but just it's a Buddhist story. And this fellow basically wants to heal the world. He sees the misery in existence in the world around him, and he wants to learn what he can do to fix it. And his enlightenment, the road to his enlightenment, comes from his understanding that he just has to be available to do the work, and that it never really ends. That no matter how many people he helps, there's always going to be someone else who's going to need his help, who's going to need his kindness, who's going to need that support. And his enlightenment comes from an acceptance of that truth, instead of being crushed by that reality and being like, well, forget it, I'm not going to do it if it's not really going to solve it in the end. What happens is he splits into this figure we're seeing in the picture, where he has all of these hands with which he can better help and serve the world. And each of these hands has eyes with which he can better see those he's helping. He has all of these heads with which it kind of represents all of the personalities, all of the different forms that he can take in order to help people better. So there's an adaptation that comes, or a transformation that comes with the acceptance, with the embracing of the work, of what it is that you're being called to do. And all of these things lie beyond that threshold that you are right now hesitating at. And again, that hesitation is valid. You have all these reasons to fear, but you also have every reason to trust, not only in divinity, if that's something that you believe in, and if you don't, then that's okay, because you should have faith in yourself and in your experiences and in what is clearly evident around you. The advice here that is coming through is, one, there's a lot of water in your spread. Every single card except for the center card, which is donkey skin, shows water. So Janus in the background has that water. The Page of Cups, there's a sea behind him. The Fool, the Little Mermaid, obviously water. But those three cards all show the figure outside of water, completely removed from it. And although the Fool, she's a mermaid, so she's still submerged. She's in the picture. She's completely outside of it. Why this is important to me is that in the past, there has been a separation between you and your intuition, your gut feelings, maybe even just your emotional data, like what your feelings are actually telling you about yourself. So like when we're angry, what are you angry about? What are you trying to protect? Is it valid that you're angry? When you're sad, what's actually getting to you? Or do you have a reason to feel these things, or is it just something that's residual? Is this just something that's like habitual, which is okay? Some of us are depressive. Some of us aren't happy all the time. That's okay. The world is crazy. No judgment. The point is that these cards show again a separation from that water, and the water being a symbol of, again, intuition, emotions, the subconscious. And in temperance, when there's this acceptance, this level up, there is that understanding that there needs to be a connection to that water. See how the foot is dipped into it, not submerged, not, playing around in it. It's just this connection to it in order to do the work properly. There is also this sense of innocence that's sort of needed in order to cross through this threshold. I'm looking especially at the difference between the energy in innocence of Donkey Skin, who really had to give up that sense of innocence. I mean, I don't think you get to keep that when you realize that your dad's trying to marry you. And you have to go into hiding and do all of the, to survive. That's a loss of innocence, and a valid one too. And I mean, look at the imagery itself. There's this grief, this heavy pain that looms over her. And there's, you compare that to the innocence that's sort of displayed in the Page of Cups, where there is also this, violation where, he gets eaten and brought down to the mortal realm after being this divine being. But even here, instead of there being that heaviness, there's a lightness attached to it. An understanding that, yeah, things have been bad, but that's not all that has been. And there's also, and then compare that to the difference in innocence with the Fool, where although there's no promise of anything better, it's that innocence of emotion, and honoring that innocence and those emotions that really compels this mermaid forward in that journey. And so it's not that I'm telling you to be like an innocent little being and just be cute, and no, that's not what I'm saying at all. It's just that maybe there might be value right now in a sense, quote, like, I don't know, maybe this is the wrong word, but like reverting back into a way of thinking that you had when you were really young, or at a point before you were hurt in the way that is sort of causing this hesitation now. And doing so will better enable you to succeed in this mission you're on. I hope that helped. So shout out you for maneuvering through what I can see is a very important period in your life. You've got not just one, but 4 majors in a 5-card spread. And 2 of these majors are direct progressions from one to the other. We've got the Tower, and the next card that goes in that order is the Star, which is right next to it. So that's pretty significant. That attached to the fact that all of these cards, all 5 of them, are upwards, tells me that that's how potent the energy is around you. Like, that's how important this period is in your life. There's a lot of really focused energy around you and everything that you do. And there is this sense that what's going on right now will have a direct impact on your future, and definitely what you're building. And that's new moon energy, right? What we're building, what's growing, what we're working on. And you want to be mindful of these things at this point, because what's going on right now will have really heavy implications on what it is, on those things, again, that are coming in the future that you're building, that are growing right now. Before I hop into the rest of the reading, I do want to point out that there is this sense that if this isn't hitting, if you aren't currently in a period that feels this important, you're being invited to initiate this energy, because it is available to you right now. Like I said, this is new moon energy, and this is a new moon reading. What's crazy about this new moon is that it is attached to a lot of different aspects going on today. So at the new moon, the moon is really close to the sun, so they're sort of conjuncting. Both of them are trining Uranus in Taurus today at the 14th degree, which is a Taurus degree. And so there's this harmony that's going on between the sun, the moon, and Uranus. And Uranus is about upheaval, about throwing the norm out the window. And it's funny because I said that, and then the tower's right there, and it shows these figures being kind of thrown out the window. but I'll get into that in a second. So yeah, if you're not really feeling these things, this new moon might be a good time to shake things up, to start on that thing you've been wanting to start up on, or just whatever it is. You want to grow something, you want to build something, now would be a really good time. But know that if you do that, the rest of this reading is going to kind of apply to what's going to happen. And I don't want it to dissuade you. I just want you to kind of be aware of it, because it is kind of hard work that comes attached to wanting more. And so, again, the new moon, really heavy thing going on where it's in harmony with Uranus, and Uranus is about upheaval. What's also happening, let me look at my checks notes. Lord, where are we? Mars is also trining Pluto, Venus is trining Jupiter, and the pre-retrograde for Mercury starts today, at the new moon, which is September 6th. So, a lot happening today. Good time to get things started. Good energy to get things going. And I'm sorry, like my voice keeps on kind of coming and going. Let me just kind of drink some water here. Sorry. So okay, moving into the reading itself, the Fool is this joyous leap into a way of being, a joyous leap into a way of being, or of thinking, or of feeling, and this leap is driven by faith. Faith in what kind of carries you, faith in that no matter what, things are going to be okay, which can be regarded as foolish by a lot of people, and so that's why we have the Fool here with this leap of faith. And Justice next to it is cause and effect energy. This happened because that happened. What's going on right now is because of those things that happened in the past. It's just this idea of give and take, of before and after. And so that's also why Justice is attached to ideas of karma, which again is kind of like divine give and take, divine cause and effect. And it's also justice because the word justice, it's also about doing what's right, which is also doing what's right comes attached to understanding the cause and effect of things. You want to do right because you understand what harm evil does, which is a pretty black and white way to look at it. But, I'm just trying to, for brevity, we'll just leave it at that. And so these two cards attached to each other, this leap of faith with, doing what's right, there's this idea of gleefully being willing to jump into this new way of being or thinking or being that is in alignment with your values. And this is something that you're definitely willing to lose things for, like the Little Mermaid does. She loses her comfort and her familiarity. In fact, and I say comfort because as she walks on land, she's also in pain. So there's this sense of like you're willing to go through things for this, and you're also willing to fight for it. Justice depicts a figure of Korean lore, and I don't think it's lore. I think this was an actual like group of people who were a private faction within the government who aided the emperors in fighting corruption. And so they were kind of pinnacles of righteousness and justice. And the story attached to the figure depicted here is that he went off to fight some evil, and when he came back, his fiance had kind of been forced into this other marriage, and so he comes in and fights that justice, saves his bride. And so there's this sense of like fighting for what's right, for what's unjust and cruel. And what comes after this, starting this new life and accepting and doing these things because it's right, is the Tower. And the chaos of the Tower comes as a result of this commitment that I'm talking about with the Fool and Justice. It's a response from the universe that, it's kind of heard that you're willing to do all of these things. It's heard or understood your willingness for more. And so there, it's front and center. The Tower is kind of talking about how if things are kind of being upheaved, and we talked about Uranus being about upheaval, and in fact, the Fool is in tarot attached to Uranus, the planet Uranus, and the star is attached to the zodiac sign Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus. And so Uranus is really coming in strong, and that's really cool because this is in a new moon reading, and the new moon is in harmony with Uranus. So if you're in Aquarius, cool. Hey, welcome. I'm glad you're here. But Aquarius energy, Uranus energy, upheaval and doing things out of the norm and doing things differently. That's what's kind of going to get you through this moment of upheaval with the tower. So if things are being shaken up in your life, know that it is on purpose. It is scripted. It is the universe shaking things up and moving things out of the way in order to make space for the things that are coming because of that commitment, that the new way of doing things that is being depicted in the Full Injustice. And what comes after the direct progression to the chaos of the tower is the star from 16 into 17. And what I love about the star is that it addresses the illusion that after a climactic moment, like in the tower, there should be a result. There should be peace. And the star, there is peace here. There is that sense of peace, but the star is the quiet after the chaos, the direct moment after. Before we even do anything, before there's even a reaction to it, there's the acknowledgement that that thing where like the turmoil of the tower is now over, and we're kind of trying to figure out, okay, what happens next, what comes next. And so there's this quiet energy of the star. And to better understand what I'm talking about here, it's kind of good to understand that the star comes as the first of three cards in this progression from 17, 18, and 19 of the brightening of the light at the end of the tunnel. And so we start with the star, which is very dim, and then the moon, which glows brighter, and then the sun, which creates the daytime. And so there's this progression of light. And so the star is that first moment, that first indication of hope. And so that's what's being depicted here, is that moment when, after the chaos, when we're feeling lost and we're still feeling scared, we take a moment, we take a breath, and we pray for a way through. We clutch onto what little hope or what little light we can muster. And that is in essence what you're being called to do, is to hope and to have faith that, one, you're going to make it through and that you are being carried. And if you don't have a faith, if you don't have, if you're not really like a divinity type of person, then understand that you've got you. You've got what it takes to carry yourself through. And it's about maintaining your hope, holding on to that hope in order to see yourself through. And attached to that, there's also this idea that in those dark moments, it's good to remember why it is that you're doing this in the first place, which is, again, the Fool, that willingness to do these things for the right reasons, justice, things that align to your values, things that align to who it is that you are now. And so rely on your hope and your faith. Rely on those things because, one, this is all part of the plan. That's why all of these are coming up, upwards. There's all these majors. Majors are an indication of the big picture. And so all of this is kind of, you're meant to be going through all of this. So, take comfort in that, even if there isn't much comfort to be had. You're being asked to have faith in these moments so that when the blessings come in, you will have relied on that faith and you won't doubt those blessings. Those blessings won't be marred by your skepticism because you will have, at that point, you will have relied on your faith to get there in the first place. So having relied on it, you will have trust in it, and there will be an addressing of that skepticism and that doubt. The Four of Cups here at the end is this small warning. Not to allow yourself to be distracted by what's instantly gratifying, but ultimately a distraction from, again, the big picture that's being shown by the majors. In this story, this king has everything, and outside his palace walls, there's this beautiful bird who sings a beautiful song. But he's so distracted by a mechanical bird that doesn't really value it until the end of his days. And so don't let that be you. Don't miss out on this great energy, this great opportunity to go through this, chaotic moment, but in order to gain great blessings. hope it helped. So there's this clear distinction that's coming up between the old you and the new you. We have, on one hand, the King of Pentacles, which is the new you right now, and the Knight of Swords reversed at the other end, which is the you on the way out, the old you. Based off of just those two cards, the Knight of Swords is about speed, moving fast, moving quickly. The King of Pentacles is very aware of the value of patience and slowing down. So very clear distinction right there. That's a type of maturity, right? And so this transformation has really come as the result of either some type of liberation or the facing of a really deep ingrained fear, because that's what the devil is about. And the devil is front and center reversed, which means that this thing's influence of that fear, the thing that was oppressing you, that you have now liberated yourself from, is now over. It's reversed. It's gone. And so what happened when the devil was confronted, so to speak, that either as a fear or as an influence over you or power over you, once it was confronted, that power and that influence, it was over. It was transformed to death, right? It completely was eradicated from your view, from your what was really holding you. And this happened for better or worse. And why I say it that way, because, liberation, clarity, facing of fears, that's always a good thing, of course. But very rarely do those things come and then once we're free, once we are no longer afraid, is everything good? No. Now we have to face the reality that exists beyond the blindfold of that fear, the blindfold of those shackles. And so sometimes what we lose when we give up that oppression, when we give up that fear, what we lose is comfort. Think of the term ignorance is bliss, how we a lot of times choose not to see the truth of something because it's more comfortable to remain ignorant to it. The devil reverse is speaking to an acknowledgement, a full acceptance of a truth that is uncomfortable to face. And that's what I'm talking about, where that discomfort killed death, your comfort. Facing that truth, that uncomfortable truth, killed that comfort or that bliss that you were sitting in your ignorance. So that's kind of that idea where facing this truth, defeating the devil, came at the cost of something. But it's okay because death isn't a bad thing. Transformation is a good thing. It eradicates things. It moves things out of the way in order to make space for what's coming in. And what's coming in, you've kind of been building, you kind of see it panning out for you. If you don't fully see it yet, then you know it's coming because you are patient. You have learned, you have matured. You've learned not to move quickly, not to just go in guns blazing like the Knight of Swords. You've, again, now matured past that. And that's kind of the good thing that comes with that. If there was something kind of, how I was talking about, that there's a negativity sometimes, not a full negativity, but just the loss of that comfort isn't always a joyous thing, right? And so that's what I'm talking about, is that we do that in order to gain the wealth of the King of Pentacles. And so that's what I wanted to, I kind of wanted to clarify what I was talking about. It comes, for better or for worse, that liberation, that defeat of the devil comes with the transformation. And so it can be a little overwhelming or very overwhelming trying to figure out the best course of action when the ways that used to work don't anymore. And so this overwhelm, all of these courses of actions that I'm talking about, the Seven of Cups, right? And we see this figure who is pondering as to which option is best. Directly attached to the King of Coins, which here depicts the world turtle, and the turtle, again, the value of slowing down. That's the advice, that when you feel overwhelmed and you don't know what to do, and you're like, oh my God, what's the best course of action here? I don't really know what to do because the way that I used to do things before, I can't really do those things anymore. and I don't really have any new way of doing things because I haven't really like figured those things out yet. Well, the advice is to slow down, to remember that yes, the transformation did happen, and it does leave a lot of openness to the way that you're going to do things. Obviously, don't do things the way that you used to, because that's what the point of the transformation was. But you will have the answer again if you slow down, if you listen to yourself and what your intuition or whatever it is that you trust. And it should be in it should be your intuition, by the way. But if you don't have that fully developed yet, talk about it with someone you trust. Uh, I, you know, get a tarot reading. Hit me up. I don't know, but there is this idea of the overwhelm is happening because you're trying to take on too much too fast. And the answer will lie in you slowing down and really contemplating, really sitting with each option and what implications are attached to those options. And there, in that slow process, you will find your answer. So this, yeah, really quick, really kind of directly to the point. But if there, again, if there is this sense of like despair, if there is this idea of not knowing how to move forward, take into account all of the ways or how far you've come, all of the ways that you've changed, and those what you've learned along the way, and how you can apply these lessons into this decision you have to make. And if there is no decision to be made, then what the Seven of Cups is really pointing to is, again, when you have a decision to make, when you feel overwhelmed, remember to slow down. So the King of Pentacles shows again the world turtle, this idea of the big picture, because the world turtle is this Iroquois belief that the earth upon which we are rests upon the back of a turtle. So big picture stuff, not really focusing on the fine details of our own personal everyday life, but again, attaching ourselves to this idea that there's more than what we fully understand. And that kind of brings up ideas of astrology, right? And that comes in through really strongly, that maybe that's what kind of maybe helped you gain this transformation. Kind of what's gotten you through the facing of that devil. And if that isn't true, then astrology might help you out right now. This is a new moon reading, and in fact, this new moon is attached to a lot of aspects going on. At the new moon, the moon is really close, at the closest point it can be to the sun, and so the sun and the moon will be conjuncting Uranus and Taurus. So there's this harmony there between the planet of upheaval. And also there's like, I think Venus is trining Jupiter, Mars is trining Pluto, and the Mercury pre-retrograde shadow starts today. There's a lot going on with the astrology today, so there's a lot of energy to get things going. There's a lot of harmony between the planets because there's all that trine energy. And so look into the astrology right now. Maybe that'll help you gain some clarity as to the best course of action moving forward. But again, there is value in taking the time to figure out a solution to your problems, to this conundrum in the Seven of Cups. And again, it takes applying the lessons you've learned in the defeat of the devil, in the transformation that happened, the death that happened in that confrontation, and the value of slowing down, no longer being quick and impulsive like the Knight of Swords as you were in the past, more so like the King of Coins here, who slows down and is patient. The world turtle, this universal symbol for slowing down, being patient. Yeah, I hope that helped. So right off the bat, there is this understanding that you are currently going through something with someone. And if that isn't true, then something is about to go down between you and someone. Now, it isn't entirely a bad thing. It's just that the two of you have really important things to take care of outside of the thing that you guys have going on together. And so this doesn't necessarily have to be someone with whom you are romantic with. That doesn't necessarily have to be true, though it can be. It definitely can be. But again, that doesn't really come through. There's not a lot of sense of romance here. It can be. I'm just saying there are other relationships beyond romantic that we can be talking about here. And who this is someone you have a deep bond with. And it is that bond that's really being called into question. Not in terms of loyalty. I'm not really seeing anything about like, oh, nah, nothing like that. I'm not even going to try to give an example. Because you know what I mean. But it's more so just saying that, again, something's going on between the two of you. And that thing, and this thing might be like one event and it kind of like all boils down to this moment, or this could be like a period of time through which you're both struggling either to maintain this relationship, or you're really maybe not struggling to maintain this relationship, and maybe the maintenance of this relationship is coming at the cost of your individual tasks. So that's why this relationship is kind of being highlighted. Here in the center, we have that card of this exchange that's going on between these two figures, these two characters. And that exchange is what's really important to me and what I'm really, really seeing here. And again, like I keep saying, it's about how each of these individuals has something that they have to take care of. So on one side, like this card is in the center, and on one figure's side, so like the little dude's side, he's facing the side where like the two male figures are. So like the Knight of Cups shows a male figure, Justice shows a male figure. So there's that like distinction between him looking where the guys are essentially, and her being facing the direction Rapunzel showing in the tower, and the girl being shown in the Eight of Cups. So fuck the gender binary. Of course, this isn't about like, oh, if you're a girl, then you are the girl here, and if you're a boy, no, it's not about that. It's just that there is this clear distinction between there being one person who is being indicated here in this reading by the masculine person, by the dude, and there is the other person who is being reflected here by the girl. And so that's all that is about. And before I get into that aspect, I do want to point out that overall there is this sense that separation is important, is valuable. Now this can mean a full-on separation from this person, and if there's evidence supporting that in your life, then maybe now's the time to consider it. But it could just be about parsing out time and energy to deal with what you need to take care of away from this relationship, away from what's going on here. And again, this is beneficial to the both of you. This is sort of what's necessary in order for the both of you to succeed, not only in this relationship, but beyond that. And so why I'm talking about degree of separation. So the Six of Cups itself shows the story of the Snow Queen, where these two friends, the Snow Queen herself takes one of them and the other one has to journey to rescue the other one. This moment in the tower shows the moment in Rapunzel when the prince is thrown out of the tower, and so is Rapunzel after she's of no use to the queen, and sorry, not the queen, the hag who keeps her. And they eventually do find each other, but there needed to be that destruction of that oppression that was happening to her in order for her to gain that freedom and her prince. And yeah, there was that darkness that needed to happen, but again, separation that needed to happen, but they do come back together. And in the Eight of Cups, also the separation between this figure and her brothers, who have been turned into swans, and she has to get them back. And even in Justice, the dude being depicted in Justice, at the end of the story that's kind of attached to this tarot deck, he comes back from war, this huge mission that he's on, and his girl is basically being forced by this noble to marry him instead because everyone thinks that this dude's dead, fighting war. And he comes and rescues her, and like kind of there's this reconciliation. So there is this idea of reconciliation, of the bond that you guys have, being able to withstand, being able to endure that separation to whatever degree we're talking about. Again, it can be something as simple as like, hey, I need you know, sometimes where I'm not really like seeing you like all the time to do things that I need to do, or it, sorry, not even just like not see you, but just like, there needs to be some time where I can deal with my things and you deal with your things. Or it can be about like, hey, maybe we do need to separate, figure out what's going on. And that not coming from like I want to get away from you, but basically just coming from a place of, hey, I see that I have a lot going on, I see that you have a lot going on. Let's give each other the proper space in order to give each other our full attention without it being diminished by, again, these tasks that are pressing. And so, yeah, I did want to talk about how there is this degree of separation, but to not be afraid of it, because there is this really strong sense throughout the whole reading of there being endurance, if not reconciliation. If there is a complete, separation, then there is a sense of reconciliation. And if there isn't a complete separation, then an endurance through this hardships that you guys are going through. Moving into those tasks, right? So we'll start with him. He's facing the Knight of Cups reversed in justice. And the Knight of Cups reversed, that is coming up reversed, is saying that this Knight of Cups energy is present, is available to this person, whoever, whether this is you or the other person. This energy is available to you, but you're not tapping into it for whatever reason. Notice how in the Six of Cups, there is this crow that's looking over this very innocent scene. And I take this to be how there is this understanding of this foreboding fate that's looming over them. And it's like they don't know what's about to happen, but fate does, and it's watching. And fate is attached to divinity, and fate itself is kind of like points us towards what's coming up, right? Because if we're following fate and fate is playing out, then we're being led to what comes next. And so the Knight of Cups, it's being reversed. And if you notice, the Knight of Cups has this bird also that he's attached to, that he's kind of like in companionship with. There is this sense then that you are neglecting whoever, if this is you or the other person, that this person is neglecting to follow their fate, to follow what they're being called to do. And in doing so, they are negating their level up, their progression from minor Knight of Cups into the major Justice. And Justice, again, is to kind of bring up how I said earlier, is this dude who went off to fight war or whatever mission he was on and came back and, fought and liberated his girl from this corrupt person. That's what he's about. He's this figure who fights corruption and fights injustices, and he's a pinnacle of justice. And that's what you're being called to do. This idea of, or you or this other person, whoever it is, being called to level up from where you are at right now into the next stage. Whether, it could be like going to school and getting your career, or moving somewhere to like advance in your career, or whatever it is. Just there is this sense that you're being called to do something that's going to level you up in a really big way, from minor Knight of Cups to the major Justice. On the other hand, she is facing the Tower reversed and the Eight of Cups reversed. And I'm kind of going from the center outwards, because that's how I read this. This reading really came through for me with the Six of Cups being the first card and everything kind of moving outwards from it. And on this side, there is definitely a heavier handed type of transformation that's being promised here. And I definitely see why there might be a hesitation or an outright neglect to move towards this transformation, because you can definitely sense that it's heavy if this is you. Or if this is the other person, then they can feel that this is going to be really harsh and really heavy. And you know what? No judgment here. Take your time. Move through it as you need to. But understand that there is great things to be gained from moving through that pain and painful process, not only in this relationship that we're talking about, but beyond that. And so the Tower, again, reversed, shows a blocking of that energy, us not wanting to go through the grueling process of destruction and upheaval, because those are really chaotic words and chaotic concepts that we sort of naturally fear. But the thing is that divinity, or whatever we believe in, comes and shakes things up and removes things that there's no space for anymore. Especially as we are transforming and becoming something better in order to make space for these better things that are coming in, we need to get rid of the things that no longer really need to be here anymore. And so, although loss is scary, destruction can be scary, the the possibilities that come from that destruction is what you need to focus on. And beyond that, in the Eight of Cups, we see this figure who is standing in, working with thorns, and she's bleeding, and she's also stepping on them. And so there is this idea of really hard work, beyond hard work, grueling work, work that is going to cost you, maybe physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever that is. There is this sense that it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a tribulation, a trial through which you're going to have to endure. And the energy of the Tower and of what's being shown in the Eight of Cups, there is this sense of dread and despair kind of attached to this feeling that, like, there's no promise of a good outcome. And this might be especially true if it's like, oh, well, I'm like losing this one good thing, if we're talking about like a complete separation, with that Six of Cups relationship we're talking about. It's like, oh, I have to lose that, and I have to go through this thing. Like, what's the point? Like, why am I going to do that? Well, again, the bond will endure, and everything that comes from these trials and tribulations only makes you better and more receptive and more enabled to maneuver through the blessings, the good things that are coming in because of what's going out. The energy of the story of Rapunzel and the story of the girl shown in the Eight of Cups, who has to do this harsh task in order to liberate her brothers who have been turned into swans. There is a lot of family. There's this idea of family attached to these two cards. So maybe this person who is being represented by the girl here, whether that's you or the other person, the task that you are being called to do or they're being called to do is in the home, or has something to do with family or the other relationships that they are in close connection with. Whereas on the other side, on the dude side, on the masculine side, whoever that is, there is this idea more internal. They're both kind of alone in their cards and their journey. So that might be more of an internal progress for that person, where on the other side, that other person or you are it's about other people, something in the home, something to do with, like, again, really close relationships. But again, hold on to this idea that the bond will endure, that there is something good to hold on to through the darkness and the tribulation of the Tower, if that's you. And if you're the other person who is going through your level up, well, one, count your blessings that you're not the person who's going through that other stuff. Hold your partner close if that's possible, comfort them through this process, but understand that you also have to level up and go through your own maturing, your own transformation into this better version of yourself, if you are this masculine person, whichever one you are. Hold on to what you need to. Understand that the bond, if it really, it's important, it will withstand it. And if it doesn't, then understand that that bond is promised to you. But you have to go through this transformation in order to make space for it. I hope it helped.